Welcome to the history of Lithuania. Hello, and welcome back to the history of Lithuania. Last episode we talked about the period of unification in Lithuania, how it went, who did it, and why. We ended the episode with the death of Mindaugas. This episode we will briefly discuss what happened after he died and who got the country back on its track. Before I begin, I want to quickly mention that episode 1 through 5 will be available on YouTube as per popular request. All the following episodes will also be uploaded there. For now, I don't have any plans of uploading any video footage, but perhaps in the future I might record something. Also, I do want to apologize for the huge gaps in the episodes due to the end of the year, Christmas period, New Year's, and school stuff. I could not keep up. Good news is that during the month of January, I should be able to put out 2 more episodes. No new questions from viewers, so I encourage you to ask anything you'd like, and I will do my best to answer. A short thank you to all the viewers as well, as we recently hit 100 subscribers. Anyways, that's it with the updates. Let us continue to the episode. After the death of Mindaugas, Lithuania was in a bit of a peculiar situation. The situation could be described as a mix of unrest and power struggles as the lands looked for a new ruler. Right after Mindaugas, his own murderer, Trainiota, became the Grand Duke. He only ruled for a few years, and during that period, pretty much nothing of significance happened. His reign was ended by Vaishvilka, a son of Mindaugas. Not much is known about him, other than that he was intensely religious, and after becoming Duke of some lands for a period, he decided to give them away to begin a life of a monk. During the assassination of Mindaugas, he is believed to have been in Greece as a missionary, although some historians believe that he might have been present and narrowly avoided death himself. He later managed to depose Trainiota by forging an alliance with his enemies and keeping friendly relations with the Teutonic Order. He ruled for 3 years before giving away his title. He then went on to lead a Christian life. The title was given to a Ukrainian named Shvarn, who was an ally of Vaishvilka. Unfortunately for Vaishvilka, Shvarn's brother was very unhappy by the uneven power distribution and murdered him a year later. Shvarn ruled for 2 years, not much is known about it, and he was deposed in 1269 by Traidanis. Grand Duke Traidanis is the second unifier of Lithuania after the unsuccessful reign of Mindaugas. To conclude this part in the simplest way possible, after the murder of Mindaugas, Lithuania had a power struggle for approximately 6 years before Traidanis managed to successfully establish himself as a duke. In the next part, we will be talking about his rule. How exactly Traidanis came to power is not very well known. My personal theory, drawn from the fact that Shvarn happened to die around the time Traidanis took power, leads me to believe that most likely he was put into power by Lithuanians themselves, as he is seen as a very comparatively conservative ruler who cared about Lithuanian lands, traditions, and its people. We know a little bit about the biography of Traidanis. He is a noble from Aukštaitija, an ethnographic region of Lithuania. In current-day Lithuania, it is the largest of the regions and roughly translates to the upper land, as in Žemaitija translates to lower land. It is called that because Aukštaitija is located at the northeastern part of Lithuania, which, geographically speaking, is at the top of the country. He was also a Duke of Kernavė. I never really mentioned Kernavė a lot, but it is a good time as any to talk about it. Kernavė is the first capital city of Lithuania. Today, it has one of the most extensive archaeological records kept to date. If you do ever visit Lithuania, I highly recommend going there, not only for the historic value, but also for the beauty of the land. Anyways, as I was saying, Traidanis was the Duke of Kernavė, and once he took upon the title of Grand Duke of Lithuania, he came in strong with anti-Christian sentiments. These could be partial reasons as to why Traidanis might have become the Grand Duke. At the time, Lithuania was still under pressure from the Teutonic Order. He was quite successful at repelling the order from continuous attempts at invading Lithuania. On one occasion, it is recalled that during the Battle of Karuse, he defeated the Knights of the Order and during the battle managed to kill Otto von Lütterberg, the ruling master of the order. The Teutons were obviously not happy about this and sent another regiment led by a new master, Andreas von Westphalen, who was also promptly killed by Traidanis. During the following years, the order managed to muster enough strength to venture deeper into Samogitia and built a fort in 1273, which Traidanis failed to occupy on several occasions. A few years later, the opposing forces once again attempted to venture deeper into Lithuania territory, but failed quite tremendously, which caused Samogitians to rebel. But before that, Traidanis managed to kill the ruling master of the order once again, the third master killed during his reign as Grand Duke. Another important historic piece of trivia is that the Samogitians finally acknowledged Lithuania as a superior power and asked for assistance in the fight against the order and came to Traidanis, a request that he granted and continued to assist them until his death in 1282. It is thought that Traidanis died of natural causes, an unexpected fate for a ruler of Lithuania, and to my knowledge, either one of the very few rulers to die naturally, or perhaps even the only one. One more thing that is very important when discussing Traidanis is his acceptance of Prussian bolts into Lithuanian lands after they were driven out by the Holy Order of the West. Traidanis was a brilliant general and took good care of the people living in his lands. He gave land to the fleeing Prussians in Wallonia, current-day Belarus. It is also important to note that during his rule he was quite a bit of a threat to the Poles, and it is recalled that the Duke of Mosuria had to marry his daughter to save him from their frequent attacks. And that's about it. We can now conclude. The rule of Traidanis was not peaceful but quite meaningful. First, he managed to unify the divided nation once again, after the death of Mindaugas, which aided the Lithuanians immensely in resisting the conquest of the Teutonic Order. He was also probably the first ruler who assisted the Samogitian fight against the Teutons and was very pro-paganism. And finally, after his death in 1282, he managed to leave a comparatively stable nation to the hands of his successor Domantas. Traidanis left a country that became quite a force that its neighbors now had to reckon with. Now that we have discussed the finer details of Traidanis, we should move on to discussing what went after him. And after him, we have a classic situation of quick successions of rulers who ruled for a very short period and did not do anything of significance. So I'll clamp 3 of them together and just say some things that, in my opinion, are most important from their periods. After Traidanis died, Domantas inherited his throne. We will not be talking too much about him because there is nothing to talk about. There is only one entry about his entire rule, so we know almost nothing about him, unfortunately. From Russian chronicles, we know that he, for some reason, invaded Tver and was either killed or captured. And that's it. That's all we know about him. His rule lasted from 1282 to 1285. His successor was Butigeidis. We also don't know much about him, but we also don't know too much about him, but the 2 main things that are important to mention is that he was the first one to utilize castle building in Lithuania, which aided heavily in the defense against the Teutonic Order. He was also the first and undisputed member of the Gediminas dynasty, which will be important later. Historians are not exactly sure when he died. 2 guesses are either 1290 or 1292, and he was succeeded by Butvydas, the brother of Butigeidis. Another ruler from the dynasty of Gediminas, another ruler that we know very little about. It is believed that he and his brother Butvydas were co-rulers of Lithuania, a practice which will again be seen during the reign of Kęstutis and Algirdas. Butvydas took part in the attacks of Masovia, a direct ally of the Teutonic Order. Some historians believe that Butvydas might have been the father of the Grand Duke of Lithuania Gediminas, but this fact is disputed. We know for a fact, though, that he is the father of Vytenis, another duke that we will talk about in a moment, who was a memorable ruler to some extent. Butvydas died in 1295 due to unknown reasons, and his title was inherited by Vytenis. In conclusion, during the period of 1282 to 1295, we had 3 rulers that we know very little about, and in general, this period of Lithuanian history is one of the least documented ones. We have only a few very sparse sources that talk about all the historic facts, and even those facts can potentially be biased. In my opinion, the most important part is probably the fact that during the reign of Butigeidis, we started building strong castles, which I believe could have been an important turning point. But it's just my opinion, so as always, take it with a grain of salt. Let us move on to the reign of Vitanis, a very important ruler who is generally overlooked by historians. The rule of Vitanis is a bit of an enigma in my eyes. He has achieved quite a lot to foster prosperity for the Grand Duchy, but generally is overlooked and overshadowed by Gediminas. The reason as to why this is, we will discuss later, as I wish to give Vitanis his fair tribute. His reign can be described as a mix of defensive and diplomatic efforts to strengthen Lithuanian positions against its enemies. And the main key points I want to talk about are the union with Riga, his fight against the Teutonic Order, and his relationship with Gediminas. First, let us discuss his alliance with Riga. I was talking to my friend the other day and I briefly mentioned Vitanis to him. He has heard of him, but not too much. Then he asked me why I thought Lithuania was a successful power of the time, and my answer was quite simple. Luck, timing, and Lithuanians hating Christians. This might be an overly simplified opinion, but let's take Vitanis as an example. Vitanis ruled from 1295 to 1316, a bit over 20 years. During this time, the Teutonic Order was still raiding Lithuanian lands with the intention to conquer it. At around the same time, the Archbishop of Riga had a disagreement with the Teutonic Order in Livonia over the claim of conquered lands. The Archbishop of now a powerful city-state wanted to keep most of the Livonian conquered lands because he saw himself as the grand ruler. Vitanis saw an opportunity for an alliance, made some vague promises, and invaded Livonia. And once again, Lithuanian forces managed to kill the ruling master of the order. The alliance itself was important because of a few reasons. It gave way to an increase in trade and a long-term consolidation of influence along Daugava River, which runs through current-day Russia, Belarus, and Latvia. This also enabled Lithuanians to assert further dominance in Ruthenia over religious bases. Ruthenia will later become one of the last parts to be conquered by Vytautas to make the Grand Duchy the largest it will ever become. I am jumping ahead of history with this, but it is important to mention because this information was news to me. And lastly, after the alliance with Riga, Lithuanians could finally be seen as an actual state that deserves its place on earth rather than murdering pagans, as was seen by the Western nations of the time. In the Lithuanian curriculum, we do not learn of Vitanis, even though he undoubtedly is an incredibly important historic figure. Vitanis was just as conservative as Traidanis and tried to keep good relations with Samogitians, his own people, and also remain a pagan. I want to also quickly mention that around this time, the end of the 13th century, the Baltic tribes are gone. Prussians were one of the last tribes to be conquered by the Teutonic Order. Another achievement of Vitanis is his campaign led against the Teutonic Order. I mentioned that the Duke Butigeidis, who laid the foundations of building stronger castles, well, Vitanis saw it through. He builds numerous castles along the river Nemunas and Jura, two major rivers in Lithuania. The Teutonic Order was most likely attempting to connect with Livonia alongside the Baltic Sea, and these infrastructure achievements are going to see that it does not happen. Another reason why Vitanis managed to defend against the Teutons is due to his once again diplomatic skills of overseeing that the Samogitians lead a meaningful resistance against them through his reign. And lastly, let us discuss his relationship with Gediminas before moving on to some fun pieces of trivia I managed to dig up. It is generally believed that Vitanis and Gediminas were brothers, but this claim is a part of a huge scholarly debate. Some historians believe they might have been cousins, or Gediminas might have even been Vitanis' hostler. They co-ruled Lithuania for a few years. At first, it was thought that Gediminas inherited the title from his brother after his death. Vitanis was believed to have died from being struck by lightning for quite a long time, but it turned out to be a simple error in translation. Later records uncovered from Germanic sources revealed that the more probable scenario was that Gediminas murdered Vitanis to usurp the throne, which is one of the accepted theories. Another thing that I wish to mention about him before moving on to Gediminas is that Vitanis should be credited with making Vilnius a true hub of trade, even though from the historic perspective Gediminas is the one who is given credit the most. The history behind the entire predicament of who made Vilnius the city that it is shrouded in disagreement, because we don't know much about the origins of Vilnius in general. We know that King Mindaugas allowed for the construction of Vilnius Cathedral, which was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt throughout the ages. We also know that Vytenis had made a promise of Christianization to Riga's archbishop and even invited Franciscan monks to build a church in Vilnius, an action that some historians believe to have put Vilnius on the map. But again, this is incredibly difficult to confirm, thus, take it with a grain of salt. Vytenis' reign ended after 21 years in 1316 and his throne was passed down to Gediminas. Right, now that we talked about Vytenis, we can conclude. Vytenis was important because he managed to keep Lithuania intact for 20 years, established meaningful relations with Riga, made Lithuania somewhat of a hub of trade for a time, and then managed to pass down a very stable country to Gediminas. It is also very important to mention that, if not for Vytenis' efforts of diplomacy, Gediminas would never have been able to send any letters to Western nations. Let us move on to the final part of the episode, Gediminas and Vilnius. I'd like to begin this part with the legend of the establishment of Vilnius. If you ever visit the city and ask anyone how Vilnius was established, everyone will be able to recite this tale. I think it's pretty cool, and it goes like this. Legend has it that the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Gediminas, was hunting in the sacred forest near the valley of Šventragis. Tired, after the successful day's hunt, the Grand Duke settled in nearby for the night. He fell soundly asleep and began to dream. A huge iron wolf was standing on top of a hill, and the sounds of hundreds of other wolves inside it filled all the surrounding fields and woods. Upon awakening, the Duke rushed to the pagan priest Lizdeka to explain the meaning of the dream. And the priest told him, "What is destined for the ruler and the state of Lithuania is thus. The iron wolf represents a castle and a city which will be established by you on this site. This city will be the capital of the Lithuanian lands and the dwelling of their rulers, and the glory of their deeds shall echo throughout the world." And that's how the tale goes. An important piece of symbolism throughout the ages as well. Today, we use the iron wolf as a symbol of might. As a symbol, I would dare to say that it's one of the most Lithuanian symbols out there, apart from the Gediminid coat of arms or our national flag. Either way, moving on to discussing the achievements of Gediminas. Gediminas is considered the founder of Vilnius, but as we discussed prior, this is most likely not true. What is factually correct is that Gediminas did move the capital of Lithuania to Vilnius and made Vilnius a powerful city by attracting merchants and craftsmen to the town. He was also a great diplomat. We know of this because of the letters that he wrote to Hellenistic towns inviting them to work the lands and do their trade. This is also the first time Vilnius was formally mentioned in written records, which dates back to 1323. The true effect of the letter is questionable. The Teutonic Order put a lot of effort in blocking anyone from moving to Lithuania, and during the period of the growing strength of Vilnius, they slandered Gediminas on an almost impressive scale. Grand Duke Gediminas is also considered to be one of the most diplomatic dukes and is held in high regard by historians as the actual founder of the state of Lithuania. Prior to him, the Grand Duchy was a loose conglomerate of dukes that fought amongst each other for power. Under Vytenis, and especially Gediminas, it seems that lasting dynasties managed to establish in Lithuania and prosper throughout the 14th, 15th centuries. An important piece of history regarding this diplomacy is that he brought to daylight the atrocities of the holy orders in Lithuania, and how they are conquerors rather than spreaders of Christianity. The reason he was even able to bring these facts into the daylight is due to the achievements of Vytenis, the union with Riga, because it was through Riga that the letters traveled. Gediminas kept a close relationship with the Pope, and there are numerous letters remaining of him in direct communication with the Pope about the ongoing warfare with the Teutonic Order. During his reign, the Pope issued a statement forbidding the Christian orders from continuing the harassment of Lithuanian lands, but it of course was in vain. Gediminas also managed to secure the trust of the Pope by granting privileges to Dominican and Franciscan Christians. He was meant to be baptized on numerous occasions, but due to various circumstances it never happened. Historians believe that this was caused by the huge dissatisfaction of the promise by then still mostly pagan Lithuanians. Another theory is that Gediminas lied about the intention to get sympathy from the Pope and in turn turned the Teutonic Order against him. Unfortunately for Lithuanians, due to the ongoing rivalry between the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope, the Emperor chose to support the Teutonic Order, which in a way intensified the raids into Lithuania. On one occasion, it is recalled that during one of the disagreements between the Archbishop of Riga and the Livonian Order, the Archbishop sent a letter to Gediminas to offer Christianization, but in a lengthy reply the Grand Duke explained that only due to the grotesque nature of the Holy Order's attacks he was distanced from Christianity, and that he even considered himself a Christian, but instead of sending priests, the order kept sending their armies. The Archbishop supported Gediminas in every way, believing it would hurt the order. They, of course, tried to block this letter from reaching the Pope, but it ultimately failed. These letters reached not only the Pope, but other Western nations and once again hindered the Teutonic Order's progress towards Lithuania. This ultimately caused a truce with the order for around 4 years. Another one of his achievements is that of a land expander. He oversaw the addition of large portions of current-day Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine to be joined with Lithuania. Cities like Minsk, Polotsk, and Brest were conquered under the rule of Gediminas. Most surprisingly, he managed to do this mostly via the means of weddings and careful diplomacy. In general, Gediminas was not a great warrior, and it is even recalled that he did not enjoy fighting at all. Gediminas is also credited with strengthening the Lithuanian army by either modernizing it or improving battle tactics. He built numerous fortresses throughout the lands. He is one of the first rulers who ruled comparatively diplomatically and peacefully until his death in 1341. Lithuania's intricate historic predicament allowed it to be one of the few nations in the world who did not prosecute other religions like many other European powers did. Gediminas was the first ruler of Lithuania who protected both Catholic and Orthodox people. Today he is remembered as the founder of Vilnius, but that being factually incorrect, a more correct label for him would be the founder of the Lithuanian state. He reigned for 25 years and presumably died during an attempt at the throne. Gediminas' formal title was the King of Lithuanians and Ruthenians, the ruler and Duke of Semagilia. Even though the title is not historically accurate, it does tell us how important Gediminas was, even if it does overshadow the achievements of Vytenis in the grand scheme of things. Another fun piece of trivia about Vilnius is that the symbolic tower of Gediminas was not built during the reign of Gediminas. Archaeologists believe that it was built in the 15th century. If you are listening to this episode from abroad, I do recommend coming to visit Vilnius, as it holds incredible historic value to the entire state of Lithuania. And even according to our constitution, Vilnius is the historic capital of Lithuania. To conclude, Gediminas is seen as one of the most important historic Lithuanian figures who managed to diplomatically secure the prosperity of the lands, improve the overall statehood, and left a lasting dynasty behind. Those are some general historic facts about what happened after the death of Mindaugas. In the next episode, we will continue exploring the history of Lithuania and what happened after the death of Gediminas. And that's it for today. I encourage you to connect with us, ask us questions, and interact with the podcast so that we can reach even more people. That's it for now. Until next time.